Welcome to Rock Point Church Online. We're so glad that you're joining us for our series, Parents Anonymous, and we'd love to know that you are here. All you've got to do to let us know is click this connection card link right below and fill it out with as much information as you're comfortable with, and then someone from our team is going to connect with you this week. In just a minute, we're going to hear an awesome message from Pastor Shane, but before we get to that, sit back, relax, and check out the feed.
Did you know that Rock Point has existed for 15 years? Rock Point's story is full of only God moments. Moments when we see all that is happening and know that only God can do this. That's why we want to dream big enough to see God do what only God can do through us in the next 5 years in our church and family and in our personal lives. We're joining hands and hitting the street to be a part of what only God can do. One of our only God goals for the next 5 years is to see 750 people connect into partnership with Rock Point Church. At Rock Point, we believe being part of a church family is not membership in a club. It is a partnership where we invest our lives together towards a common goal. Partnership class is this evening. Childcare and dinner are provided. Come hear the story of Rock Point and where we are going. Simply show up at 3:45 this afternoon and we will take care of the rest. Another one of our only God dreams is to see every student and adult participate in a local or global mission trip. After all, our mission is to help people heal from life's hurts. We've got a perfect opportunity coming up next week. About a month ago, a few deadly tornadoes ripped through the Canton, Texas area. In a minute's time, these tornadoes brought total destruction and changed these people's lives forever. Next weekend, we are taking a team up to Canton to bring some of that Rock Point heart and help these people put back the pieces of their lives. No matter what your skill level is, there is something for everyone to help with. You can sign up for the trip through our RP app or online. If you've never been on a local mission trip, you'll never forget the feeling of helping someone that could never repay you back.
Hi, my name is Morgan. I've been doing a lot of wondering lately, and there's not much in my life I can really count on anymore. You seem to think a mistake was made, and they gave you the wrong kid at the hospital. Look, I know you have big dreams for me, but I wonder, what if I don't make the team? Or the grades, or turn out just like that perfect life you've been planning for me? Will you still tell your friends how proud you are of me? I can see that you care, but it feels like you care a little too much. I know you're afraid. Afraid I'm going to make the same mistakes that you made. It's not like I want to trash my life and embarrass the people that love me. But I wonder, what if I somehow, even after all your sermons, after all your silence, I end up just like you? Well, guess what? I can't be who you want me to be. I'm me. Do you hear that? I'm me. Thanks for letting me share.
Well, it's great to see you today. I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for all of you who are here, who are joining us right here in the room. Then want to give a shout out to those of you out in Liberty Hill. So glad that you joined us. And then we're glad for those of you who've logged in and you're watching online. Thanks so much for tuning in there and being with us today. Well, today we are beginning a brand new series, and we're calling the series Parents Anonymous. Because let's be honest, all of us could use some guidance along the way once in a while in our parenting. And every kid deserves to have someone in their life that can answer just some basic questions for them. Because sometimes we don't know where to go to get the answers for those types of questions at different stages while we're raising kids. And sometimes we feel lost and just need some help dealing with our specific situation. So deep inside of every kid, there are some things that they want to know. And I know that whenever a kid is about 3 years old to about 5 years old, it feels like they want to know everything and they want to know everything all the time. And then when they're about 18 years old, they think they know everything all of the time. But what we're going to discover is this, is that all kids are asking the same basic questions of the adults in their life, and they need an answer for those questions. And this series is about us giving them the best opportunity to get the answer to those questions. Now, this series is predominantly geared towards parenting because it's about parenting. And so if you're a parent or you're a grandparent or you're a future parent, you're just going to be dialed into what we're talking about. But even if you're none of those things, I believe you're going to relate to what we talked about, because when we were kids, we were asking the exact same questions. And how those questions got answered really shapes who we are today. And so it's been my prayer as we've been prepping for this series that God would just use what we talk about to maybe even heal some of the hurtful things that happened in your life that you may still be carrying today that you got whenever you were growing up. Now, before we dive in completely, I just want you to know I'm not a parenting expert. I mean, I thought I was, and then I had kids. I mean, I can remember being about 21, 22, and I'd see some kids out in public, and they were just making a scene, and I can remember thinking, my kids will never do that. But let's be honest, parenting has a way of humbling you. I mean, because we've been those parents before that showed up somewhere, and when we were getting out of the car, one of our kids got out with something that just didn't match anything else they had on at all. Or we showed up and it was cold outside and everybody piled out and one of our kids just didn't have a jacket on at all, had short sleeves on. Or they got out and they had no shoes, and then we're making this panic run to Walmart to buy a cheap pair of one-time throwaway kind of shoes just to make it through the event or the church service. And I can tell you that on more than one occasion, we have left a kid behind somewhere. One time we were heading to eat with some friends, and we thought our son was in their car, only to realize that he wasn't. And we left him at home alone, and it was just so long he had been there, we didn't even realize he was there. One time we, with our youngest daughter, when she was in a carrier, we were at a Smoky Moe's barbecue, and we got up and we left, and we went out into the parking lot, and we were talking to our friends. And while we were standing there talking, one of the Smoky Moe's employees came out carrying our daughter in the carrier and saying, "Hey, did you forget something, or do you just not want her anymore?" And I got to be honest with you, I've been toe-to-toe with my son before. We've had the carpet in our house be on fire when our kids were home alone. We were gone. We've had holes put into the walls of our home. And so what I want you to know that I am not up here propping myself up as a I got it figured out kind of parent. But what I'm hoping is that as we go through this series, that we can learn some things together that we will help our kids in their life. And so the question that we want to address today that every kid asks is this: where are the lines? Because from about age 1 to about age 18, your kids are going to be asking, where are the lines? What's out of bounds? Where are the boundaries? Show me the lines. At my daughter's first birthday, and we were those parents who threw a giant birthday party for a 1-year-old with all of our friends and a few of their kids who were her age. We were those parents. And so when it came time to open gifts, we had a house full of people, and we brought our daughter into the living room, and we put her down in front of everyone to open gifts. And as I was putting her down on the floor, she saw that everyone had stopped, and they were now looking at her. And do you know what she said? Well, she said nothing. She was 1. Come on, she can't talk yet, right? No, what she said was, "Ah!" And she just screamed and fell on the floor and kicked her feet, and it was high-pitched, and glasses were breaking in the kitchen, and people were covering their ears, and it was like, whoa, and I'm like, Satan, stop screaming, you know? It was terrible, and her mom tried to console her, and she wouldn't have any of that, and then I tried, and yeah, like that was going to work. We tried bribing her with cake and candy, and then I kind of lost it a little bit and resorted to terrorist actions, and I was whispering in her ear, you know your blinky? Well, if you ever want to see it alive again, you'll shut up, you know? And you know what she started asking us at age 1? Is where are the lines? Is this out of bounds? Is this okay? Can I do this? And so, does this sound familiar to you? Son, go upstairs, put your pajamas on, brush your teeth, and get ready for bed. And then about 10 minutes later, you go up there and you find them laying in the hallway, and they're playing with Legos, walking their feet up the wall. And you're like, hey, son, did you brush your teeth? And they're like, oh, no, sorry. And then you send them on into the, brush your teeth and get in your room. And then you go into the room, and do they have their pajamas on? No. I was looking at baseball cards. But this is where a lot of us as parents live. And then you ask them once, and then you ask them twice, and then you finally lose it, and you start yelling, get your butt in bed, and you find yourself yelling and screaming and ruining the attitude of the home and feeling like a bad parent, or at best, you feel like an angry one. And then parents of teenagers, let me just tell you, this doesn't get any easier. Mow the lawn. Have you done your homework? Take a shower. For the love of God, take a shower. And that's just the little stuff. I mean, what happens when you find out that your kid is underage drinking? Or where they've been smoking something, or they're texting stuff that you can't even believe that they would ever send? What about then? And from age 1 until at least age 18, your kid is going to be asking you, where are the out-of-bound lines? And as a parent, you've got to get this one right. And here's why. Because every child has 2 primary needs. And if you're taking notes, write this down. Here are their 2 primary needs. It is love and limits. Because kids need to know that they are loved no matter what, and they need to know that they can't get what they want when they want it. And the art of parenting is showing over-the-top love while at the same time trying to establish some limits that will help raise a kid to become a responsible man or woman of God. And so let me just ask you, if we were to take a poll here today, which one of those would you say you're better at? Love or limits? See, probably 40 to 50 years ago, most parents would have said limits, and the reason I tell you that is because I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who said, yeah, I never really heard my dad say, I love you, but I absolutely knew where the line was, and I would never cross it. I didn't dare cross it. And I'm not really suggesting that we go back to that, but almost all parenting experts today agree that the pendulum has swung to the other extreme. Like, take a look at what Marcia Moritz, a family expert, has to say about this very thing. Here's what she says. She says, stop trying to be your kid's best friend. Rather, be what they need the most. And what they need is love-giving, limit-setting parents. Let them make friends with kids their own age. You step up and be the parent. See, your child doesn't need another friend. They need a parent that loves them enough to step up and establish some limits for them. See, Ephesians chapter 6 says it this way. Take a look. It says, children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. So students, if you're a student in here, listen. In fact, if you're a student, I'm so glad that you're here. Parents, if you have kids, like younger kids, like 0 to 5th grade, I just want to challenge you to take this series to begin to integrate them into one of our children's classes, where they will get the best care and teaching for their age and give you an opportunity to really hear what God wants to say to you about parenting. I challenge you to use this series over the next few weeks to integrate your kids into those classes. But if you're a student, listen to this. This verse that we just read, this is the only commandment in the Bible specifically directed towards you. Only one. See, students, God has given you one thing to do when it comes to your parents. Obey them. Well, what if they're wrong? What if they're mean? Well, what if that, listen, I know. Your part is to obey them. And parents, can you see what that means? It means that one of our main responsibilities is to teach our kids obedience. Now, not over the top, domineering kind of way, but in a loving, gentle, I want the very best for you kind of way. And listen, this is critical. If our kids can't learn to obey us as parents, how will they ever obey God? If our kids can't learn to listen to our voice as their parent, how will they ever learn to listen to the voice of God? But that's a little bit tricky, isn't it? Because our kids don't always want to listen to our voice, do they? I mean, have you noticed this? There's something in every kid, it was in all of us, that wants to push the limits and just walk along the boundary line. In fact, Proverbs 22:15 says this, "A youngster's heart is filled with foolishness, but discipline will drive it away." You ever meet an adult that wasn't disciplined as a kid? Don't elbow them, that would be embarrassing. Yeah, we all have, right? They have what it is they have a hard time today making good decisions as an adult. In fact, there's a story from 1 Kings in the Old Testament. Take a look at that. Here's what it says from 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 6. King David never disciplined his son Adonijah at any time, even by asking, "What are you doing?" This did not end well for David, and it didn't end well for Adonijah. He never learned to obey his father, and so he never learned to obey God. His life ended by him being executed for trying to rebel and take the kingdom from the king, his dad. See, the only way to drive foolishness out of a child's heart is through discipline. And so how do we as parents effectively discipline kids? And not just for discipline's sake, but so that they will know where the lines in life really are. And what I think we're going to discover here today is that there's really three main ways to do this. And so if you're taking notes, let me just share with you the first way for us to show our kids where the lines are. The first one is this, is you have to model the behavior that you want to see. Model the behavior that you want to see. No one, parents listen, no one has more potential to influence your kid than you. Not Hollywood, not their friends, not a coach, not culture, or even a teacher has more potential to influence them more than you do as their parent. And this is a huge responsibility for us. And honestly, it's pretty scary as well. I love basketball. I love the game of basketball. And I love the Spurs, or at least I did before this week. A friend called me a few years back and said, "Hey, listen, I've got some tickets to tonight's Spurs game. Would you like to go?" And I said, "Man, that would be awesome." I picked up the tickets and grabbed my son from school, and we went to the game. And when we got there, man, it was just some amazing seats. The best seats I've ever had at a basketball game. In fact, we walked all the way down to row 1, and we sat on the row right behind the Spurs bench. It was an amazing, amazing experience. But something happened during that game, and during that game, someone fouled Tim Duncan really hard, and there was no call made. And the crowd went crazy, booing the ref and saying all this stuff. And finally, as the crowd kind of settled down, here I am right behind the Spurs bench, and I yell out as loud as I can, "Hey, ref, I know people who've gotten pregnant for less contact than that." And the ref turned around and just pointed at me. My son said, "Dad, what are you doing?" And as I sat there and thought about that, I thought, do I want my son to act that way to people who are in charge? Do I want my son to say those kinds of things to the refs in his basketball games that he's in? And the answer was no, I really didn't. See, what a huge responsibility, because it's hard to discipline your son for lying when you lie. It's hard to discipline your daughter for anger if you have an explosive temper and can't control yours. It's hard to tell your kids to quit fighting if all they ever see is you and your spouse fighting in front of them all the time. It's hard to tell your kids, be respectful to the adults in this house if you aren't respectful to each other. And if you want to take back the moral authority in your home as a parent, you have to model the behavior that you want to see. Author Timothy Kimmel says this, that the best way to ensure that our children will speak respectfully is to make sure that's how we speak to them. Parents are dreaming if they think they can bark and bite at their kids and then get anything less in return. He says, I've been on the inside of families where I've heard parents speak more harshly to children who have committed minor infractions than judges speak to serial killers when they are reading them their verdict. Parents, isn't it true that most of us have yelled out or been extremely hard on our kids for kind of over things that are just like making a mess or maybe making me a little late because you didn't get in the car, and probably a lot of other minor infractions? And so what do we do about that as parents or maybe as grandparents? And I got to tell you, I only know one answer of what to do. Ask your kids to forgive you. We ask our kids to forgive us for being that way. Because you're not going to be the perfect parent. You and I are never going to always model the behavior that we want to see. But when we don't, we can humbly confess that. And what does that do when you do that? It models the behavior that you want to see. Because you want your kid to be able to own their mistakes. You want them to be able to humbly ask someone else to forgive them. But you've got to model that to them as a parent. Let me say it this way. Your kids are going to be more attracted to the life that you live in front of them than the speeches you give them. Now, the second way that we show our kids where the lines are is that we have to learn to discipline in love. Would you write that down? Discipline in love. And here's the good news. We have a perfect model of how to do this because the Bible tells us that God disciplines us as his children. Take a look at Hebrews chapter 12. Here's what it says. It says, don't ignore it when the Lord disciplines you, and don't be discouraged when he corrects you. Why? For the Lord disciplines those that he loves. God doesn't discipline us because he's on some power trip or because he's a control freak. He disciplines us because he loves us. But let's be honest. It is absolutely easier to sit on the couch and watch TV than it is to show love through discipline. But parents who love, they discipline because they see the value it brings in raising a responsible adult. Hebrews goes on to say, no discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. You know what that means? That means never expect your kid to come and say, just, Mom, Dad, just thank you for this discipline. Thank you so much for grounding me. Thank you so much for sending me to my room. I know 20 years from now, it's just going to make me a better human being. So thank you. It's just not going to happen, right? Why? Because no discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. But afterwards, there will be a quiet harvest, which simply means they may not even notice it and they may never mention it. But there will be a quiet harvest of right living for those who are trained this way. Parenting expert Kevin Lehman says that as parents, we kind of fall into two extremes when it comes to disciplining our kids. One of those extremes is what he calls the domineering parent. And let me show you or read to you how he describes that domineering parent. He says, many parents don't act in authority, they act as dictators. It says, hey, are you going to do that, what I'm telling you to do? You're going to do it as long as you live under my roof. And then get that look off of your face or I'll get it off for you. The domineering parent. The other extreme, he says, is the permissive parent. He says, the permissive parent says, I want to meet your every need. I want to make sure that you are just happy, happy, happy. No matter what the child asks for, they get it. A violent video game, no problem. A download with lewd lyrics, absolutely. Clothes that reveal their body, sure. After all, it's just a phase. Both extremes, he says, produce rebellion. So let me just ask you, which one of those extremes do you find yourself kind of leaning towards? And what I'm guessing is that most of us are not at those extremes. But which one of those do we tend to lean toward more than the other? See, Ephesians 6:4 says this, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." What is it that provokes our kids to anger? Well, sarcasm will do it. Putting them down in front of other people, that'll do it. A dictator authority that lacks compassion will get it. Disciplining out of control will do it. All of those things causes anger in our kids. And so let me give you just a couple of practical steps on how to discipline in love. If we've got to teach them discipline, how do we do that in love? When you feel like your blood pressure's going up, and listen, every parent has been there, and you could just feel it coming up inside, and you're just right on the edge, and you're about to let go on them, here are a couple of things to help you. One is take a step back instead of a step forward. In other words, go in the other room. Take a breath. Not everything has to be resolved in the moment right now. Take a step back instead of a step forward. Secondly, have a phrase for yourself. Just commit early, before you get in the situation, to have a phrase, like something that you're going to say when you get into a disciplining situation. Like, okay, I love this kid. I'd like to kill them right now, but I really do love this kid, right? Or something along the line of, okay, God expects me to show them I really do love them. And God doesn't scream at me when I mess up. So have a phrase that kind of pulls you out of that anger mode. And then thirdly, ask yourself, what does my child need right now? Because sometimes they're just tired. Sometimes they're embarrassed. Sometimes they've been put in front of a group of people and asked to open presents when they're one. And when you ask that, what happens as you begin to communicate with your kids is when you ask, this allows for you to feel for them and to see discipline as an opportunity to correct them and redirect them. Now, if you're looking at this and you go, yeah, nice list, whatever. I'm not sure anyone can ever really do that in the moment. And to a degree, honestly, I would agree with you. But isn't it true that there are just certain things that just kind of set us off as parents, and we all have our different things with that? I'll tell you, for me, one of mine is when a kid just blows into the house, blows through the living room, and there's shoes and popcorn bags and cheese wrappers and Legos and t-shirts all over the place, and it's been about 30 seconds since they got home from school. And I like to just step back and say, okay, Jesus loves me, and so I need to. And you're like, yeah, right. No, at that point, I'm like calling them all three of their names, right? I mean, it's just on at that point. And so I'm not suggesting this is perfect, but what I'm saying is effective discipline is discipline that is done in love, no matter what the offense or the age of our kid. And then let me give you this third idea of how to show our kids where the line is, and that is we need to instruct them in what you want them to do, not just what you don't want them to do. Lots of parents are just constantly throwing flags and blowing the whistle, like, don't, that's wrong. What do you want them to do? If you look back at Ephesians 6, it says this, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger," but look at what it says, "but bring them up in the discipline," we just talked about that, "and instruction of the Lord." See, God doesn't just want our kids to know what they shouldn't do. He wants them also to know what they should do. Instruction as well as discipline. They need instruction when it comes to knowing what the right thing is to do. Like, how can I stay pure in this world? And how can I choose the right friends? And how can I stand, or should I even watch this? You know, research tells us now that the first exposure to pornography in our kids' life is 8 years old. 8. And the largest viewing audience of pornography is the ages of 12 to 17. And if you hear that and something inside of you just says, yeah, well, that's just what happens at that age. I mean, because it did with me. But did you know that men who are addicted to pornography as adults say they became addicted around age 14? In other words, decisions that your kids are making today and what's going into their minds are going to shape their life from now on. See, Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for it affects everything you do. Think about that as you raise your kids. Above all else. Above sports, above grades and scholarships and friendships, above everything else that you do as a parent, guard your child's heart because it is going to affect everything else they do. So let me just ask you, when is the last time you asked your kid, are you okay? When's the last time you sat down with your 10-year-old and said, is there anything you're angry about? When's the last time you sat down with your 15-year-old and said, are you doing okay? When's the last time you sat down with your 5-year-old and said, is there anything bothering you? Are you afraid of anything? When was the last time that you gave your kid a chance to tell you and simply reassured them that you're not going to lose it on them, you're simply there to help them? I'll tell you, as a dad, I didn't do enough of that. A few years ago, I sat down with my oldest son because the truth is things just weren't going well between us at all. And I had just kind of been learning some of this myself. And I asked him, are there some things that you're upset about? I said, are you holding on to something inside that maybe I've done that hurt you or upset you? And then I told him, the reason I'm saying this is not so that I can tell you how wrong you are for feeling that way, but so that I can listen to you and I can make right what I've done to hurt you. And what was interesting is he tried me out. He gave me just a little something to see, is this guy for real? Is that really what this is about? And when it was, and I made amends for that, the dam broke. It kind of burst. And he was just honest with me. And I kept my word. And I made amends for those things as he brought them up. But I didn't do this often enough while he was growing up. And so there was some stuff from way back. And I thought how hard this had to be for him because I simply didn't ask him and be willing to work through that. And so he's had to carry this stuff around for some years. How's your kid's heart lately? What about your grandkids' heart? Have you asked them? See, what I found is that when my kids know that I know their heart because I've asked, and they know that I'm human and I'm willing to be honest, but love them enough to ask, and then when the opportunities arise, give them instruction, they open up. If you're a student and you're hearing this message and hearing some of what I'm saying, can I just tell you how to completely freak your parents out? Go home and ask your parents for their advice about what's bothering you. Go home and sit down and just ask for their help about what's eating you up inside. And here's what I kind of already know about you students, is you already think your parents are too strict. Everybody thinks that, by the way. And you already think that your parents don't get it. And you're probably right about that one. And here's what I know about your parents. Students, I know that your parents want a better life for you than what they got. Because every parent who cares wants better for their kids. In fact, we want it so bad as parents that sometimes we will try to maintain control of every situation that you're in, students, so that you can have it. And what I'm telling you is that's not really possible, and it's not even healthy. And parents, you're not always going to be there. Your kid is going to be in a situation, and they probably already have been, where they're going to be invited to smoke something or drink something or sniff something or inhale something or look at something or do something, and you're not going to be there to tell them no. You're not going to be there to tell them how harmful that is. And they're going to be pressured to have sex and steal and cheat and bully other kids, and you're not going to be around. But parents, if we will instruct and show them where the lines are, you give your child the best shot to know what to do when you aren't there. You know, the longer I've been a parent, the more I've realized how much I need God to be that parent. In fact, James chapter 1 says this. Take a look. It says, if you need wisdom, ask God. What a great verse for all of us parents. Because some parents here, you have a teenager or you have a new adult in your life, and you're losing touch with them. They're making bad choices and running from everything you tried to teach them, and you're awake at night often just hoping they make it home safely. And you wonder as a parent, do I press in or do I lay off a little bit? I just don't know what to do. If you need wisdom, ask God. For some of you, you have young children and there's something worrying you about one of your kids, and there's this situation that just seems like it just keeps repeating itself over and over, and you're asking, what am I doing wrong? If you need wisdom, ask God. Because even even if the perfect parenting book or guru existed, and it doesn't, as a parent, you're still going to have times where you're going to be at a loss of how to instruct your kids. Nothing seems to make us more dependent on God than parenting. And so ask God to intervene in your kid's life and change their heart. Ask God to save them if they're far from God. And ask God to give them wisdom if they're being faced with challenges that you and I never faced at their age. And ask God for wisdom for this challenge as a parent that you and I have never faced before, because this is the first time we've been here as parents as well. If you need wisdom, ask God. Could I pray for you? Father, we're just honored that you would give us the privilege of bringing kids into this world. But man, God, what a responsibility. And so, God, today we come to you and we ask you for wisdom. We ask you to give us what we need to be the parents we need to be, to humbly lead and instruct and discipline our children. And so, God, we don't want to pretend that we've got this worked out. If all of us were truly honest, we need you more than ever. And so, God, for every parent in the room that is struggling with one of their children or more, God, we're asking for wisdom. God, for every student in this room who is struggling with their relationship with their parent, God, we need wisdom. And God, as a church family, help us to rally around each other and these kids, because we need your wisdom to do that. God, I want to thank you for every volunteer that is serving in children's areas today. Thank you for every person who is investing time into our kids right now so that we can try to gain something to be more like you and the parent you called us to be. God, thank you so much for them. God, guide us and lead us. Give us your wisdom as we learn to teach our kids about the lines. In Jesus' name, amen.
What a great message. Now's the time in our service that we give our tithes and offerings. But if you're just checking us out, please don't feel any pressure to give. This is for those of us that call Rock Point Church our home, to bring back a portion of what God's given us. And the easiest way to give is the online giving station right here. Again, thanks so much for joining us today. and we'll see you back here next weekend for Rock Point Church Online.